Regardless what your thoughts are on the old expanded universe or the new one being currently held by Disney, the fact of the matter is that the Thrawn Trilogy is pretty much one of the most significant releases in the franchise's history, particularly because it revitalized Star Wars' popularity for the mainstream back in the early 90s after, 10 years of not having a new movie and the popularity fading after Return of the Jedi, and also because it served as sort of an unofficial sequel trilogy to episode 4, 5, and 6. And the reason why I checked this out is, of course, because I've spent a lot of years listening to how amazing it is, how it's just like, this is what the sequel trilogy should have been, which is something I'm hearing even more so about now after The Force Awakens. And I heard all these interesting things about the character of Thrawn and how this whole deep mythology was built around him. And all that shit was really interesting, and I wanted to get into it. And so I checked out the entire Thrawn trilogy, and I spent the past few days, reading it, from beginning to end, which should serve as a good indication of what I felt about it. All those people who are saying that this is better than The Force Awakens, they are absolutely right. This is, in my opinion, this is the real sequel trilogy, if you ask me. This is just freaking fantastic on so many levels. Mostly because of how many interesting things it does with both the existing characters and the new characters it introduces. The best thing about this book, the highest praise I could ever say for this specifically, is that it is the only time I have ever seen a story where the villain is incredibly smart, not because the writer is making the heroes or the good guys complete idiots. No, he is genuinely smart because he's smarter than the good guys, meaning that there is no idiot ball in this storyline. There is no convenient instance of where Han is going to forget how the Millennium Falcon works so that an Imperial garrison can trap him in space. There is no moment where Leia, an expert in politics, is going to do something that's completely fucking stupid just to facilitate easy drama. Everybody is smart in this book. Everybody has this level of expertise, this level of knowledge, and this level of professionalism, even if you're dealing with an ex-con man or smugglers like Lando and Han, that you would expect from these characters at this point in their lives. And that also makes the villain, Grand Admiral Thrawn, far more awesome because he's able to outsmart everybody. And Thrawn is easily the highlight of this series because he is unlike any other Star Wars villain I've ever seen. He doesn't have any powers. He doesn't have the Force. He has no connection with the Sith. He is just an incredibly smart person who happens to be the leader of the Empire. He has this like Sherlock Holmes level of intellect where he can, pick up on small, minute differences in how people act. Like he can read in between the lines. Like he can see through everybody's bullshit. He's like Sherlock Holmes mixed with Tywin Lannister levels of genre savviness. He's just an incredibly intelligent character. And the thing that makes him really endearing and very interesting is that he is also nobler than a lot of the other Imperial villains that we see throughout the Star Wars mythos without being like an anti-hero or whatever. Because unlike Vader, Thrawn is not the guy who's going to murder an officer because he didn't manage to capture the Millennium Falcon. In fact, there's a really great moment in the third book where they almost capture Luke, and one of the officers tries an experimental technique with the tractor beam that almost works. And then there's this whole big moment in the book where you think Thrawn is going to kill this guy. He walks up to the officer. Everyone's dead silent. Everyone's just expecting this dude, Thrawn, to just Darth Vader this guy because that's what they expect, superior officers murdering their underlings because they failed and stuff because that's how Palpatine's empire worked. But Thrawn doesn't do that. Thrawn actually commends the guy. He tells him, I've read a lot of different techniques to how to stop a hyperspace jump with a tractor beam. This is the first one that's ever worked, and he gives the guy a promotion. He tells him, you are now a lieutenant, and you will now research how to perfect this technique for further uses for the Empire. And all these moments, along with ones where Thrawn is more ruthless, where he is more calculating, really do paint him as a three-dimensional character who's capable of being both noble and incredibly vicious at the same time. And he is, like I said, the breakout star of the book. But one thing that the book does very well, that this trilogy does very well, is introduce a whole bunch of new characters that are, in my opinion, loads more interesting than the people from the actual movies, or a lot of the people from the original movies. You have Talon Karrde, who's this kind of guy he's kind of like Han Solo if he had bigger aspirations like Lando Calrissian and he never joined the Empire. He's all about controlling information. He's all about staying neutral between the New Republic and the Imperial remnant, but events keep goading him to join the new guys. He keeps finding himself on the side of the New Republic despite his best efforts to stay neutral because he wants to benefit from both sides of the war. He's a really interesting character, and like Thrawn, he becomes very likable because he respects his underlings and because of his own intellect. Then you got Mara Jade Skywalker, who's pretty much my favorite female character in the whole Star Wars universe. She was the Emperor's hand, basically Palpatine's assassin, who, with the aid of the Force, went around the galaxy doing a bunch of jobs for him. But with the death of Palpatine and the fact that she was basically a secret agent that barely anybody knew about, Mara pretty much lost everything. She lost her status, she lost her position, but not before getting a mental imprint of the Force planted inside her mind, which means that every night when she goes to sleep, she has this false vision of Vader and Luke murdering Palpatine and Palpatine's voice telling her, "Kill Skywalker." But then as the story progresses, Mara is forced to work with Skywalker more and more and more, and she starts to genuinely really respect him, and she manages to get over this imprint, this prejudice, this sort of warped idea of Luke Skywalker in the New Republic that Palpatine planted in her mind. But what's really great about the book is that Mara doesn't just automatically just become a completely different person by the end. By the end of this storyline, she is in a different place than where we see her initially, but she still has a long way to go. It's not one of those situations where she goes through a character arc that would realistically take a few years to fully complete and develop to its logical conclusion in the span of a few months. And that's not to say that the original characters don't have interesting things to do. Luke is training Leia how to become a Jedi Knight. But the problem Luke is facing is that he has really big doubts that he's going to be able to do this. This is about 6 years after Return of the Jedi, so about almost 10 years after Episode 4. So Luke is almost 30 years old now. He still hasn't rebuilt the Jedi Order because he doesn't feel like he's up to the task. He's afraid that he's going to lead Leia and her children down the wrong path, and there's a lot of interesting stuff done there. Lando and Han Story is pretty much the fun one. It's all fun, but it's more like the most traditional, scoundrel story where Han and Lando, they're going around the galaxy along with Chewie and even 3PO, going to seedy bars, dealing with all sorts of underworld people. Leia's whole story with the Nogri is incredibly fascinating because it really plays into her skills as both a Jedi and a politician, and deals with a lot of historical baggage, a lot of socio-political things. And that's another great thing about the trilogy is that it does politics incredibly well, which is, a lot of people hate the prequel politics. I'm not crazy about them, but they don't bug me, but I understand why people have a problem with them. Here the politics are the interesting shit. You have the New Republic leadership dealing with old members who left because they thought that the Alliance was just going to take over the Empire instead of return democracy to the galaxy. You have people who are already there in the New Republic leadership backstabbing each other, planting false evidence to get others accused. It's the kind of political shit that everybody can understand and everybody can get behind. And I can't really say much more about the book without spoiling it, because there are a lot of really interesting twists and turns. There are a lot of great moments of dialogue, a lot of great moments for all the characters. All the new characters are very fun, very interesting, and the way Timothy Zahn uses them later on. I have read beyond the trilogy. I'm currently on Survivor's Quest, which is like the 6th book in this whole big meta-narrative. It is a shame that this kind of story probably wouldn't sit well with audiences, because while it does have a lot of the elements of the classics trilogy in here, there is, like I said, there is more politics, which probably would have turned a lot of people off. A lot of the character stuff here feels like a logical progression of where they were before. It's not the classic, oh yeah, we destroyed the Death Star and then the whole galaxy just lived in permanent happy peace forever. You know, no, there was still the Imperial remnant. There were still the characters growing up into full-blown adults, you know, dealing with getting older, with bigger responsibilities, and it's all done in a very compelling and a very natural way. And this just might be the best trilogy in Star Wars, which really sucks because it now doesn't count. Especially because The Force Awakens really isn't anywhere near as good as this. The Force Awakens, like I already said, it's not a bad movie, but it just doesn't compare at all to this.